and welcome to tonight's public forum proclaiming peace amid the noise of war, peacemaking in an age of militarism, held as a part of Mediterranean theological meetings. It is so wonderful to see you all here in such a huge number. I was a little bit afraid of it, of course. I hope that maybe less people would come, but of course it's completely understandable. Many of us believe that our generation would live in a more peaceful world. Instead, we continue to witness new conflicts, new suffering, and new divisions. Peace can never be taken for granted. It must be protected, nurtured, and renewed every single day. That is why conversation like this one matters so much. This evening we have honor to have such a great guests with us here in Rijeka, to be joined by two church leaders whose voices have consistently encouraged dialogue, peace and reconciliation, even in the most difficult circumstances. Please join me in welcoming His Eminence Cardinal Blase Cupich, Archbishop of Chicago, and His Eminence Cardinal Ladislav Nemet, Archbishop of Belgrade.
Thank you very much.
As our public showed you, very warm welcome to you. It is really great pleasure to have you here. And ladies and gentlemen, please just let me introduce myself. My name is Morana Kasapović. I'm going to be your moderator tonight. And please let me just to take a small part of the time to express my deepest gratitude to Mateo Uzinić, Archbishop of Rijeka, and his associates. Please. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is a great honor you gave me. Thanks a lot. Archbishop, I'll start with you, Cardinal. We said Cardinal is enough. So, Cardinal Cupich, on several occasions you have publicly expressed criticism of wars, including the most recent conflict we are facing in Iran. In Pope Leo's message for the 2026 World Day of Peace, he condemns, I quote, the dragging of religion into political struggle, the blessing of nationalism and the religious justification of violence and armed conflict, calling it blasphemy. Do Christians today have to protect Christians from another Christians?
I think that Christians have an obligation to make sure that the world is safe for everyone. It's not just a singular focus on the members of our own community. Because when we protect the rights, the dignity of every human being, then we inspire people to follow that example. And we do not look at what divides us, first of all, or what separates us, but what unites us. And so it is true that there are Christians throughout the world who are suffering persecution and violence, and we need to address that. But there are also other groups of people that are suffering from oppression, and we have to raise our voice for them as well. When we do that, we get it right, because we send to the world that we have a principled message. We don't have a partisan message, but one that's based on the principle that every human being deserves the right to life and to liberty, to the pursuit of the happiness in their lives. And so I would say that our role as church is to make sure that every human being is safe.
It is so nice to hear when you say that. Can you explain to yourself why this message isn't something normal to each and every of us? Why still we have so many conflicts in the world?
Well, I think there are forces in the world that want to divide us. And sometimes people are manipulated into thinking that if a group of people that they belong to is threatened, then in some way they have to rally their forces to join in the defense of that group. And I think that that brings us into a pathway that is very destructive. So I think that we have to be aware that there are people who would like to sow division among us, and be alert to that. and to make sure that we have this sense of ownership for the crafting of peace in the world. Each and every baptized person does. It's not just up to leaders or political parties or various groups like we have here today. But each person needs to examine in their heart, what are they doing to promote peace in a moment of conflict in their own personal life, but also in any moment in society.
Cardinal Nemet, when we are talking about our region, unfortunately, then we understand all these messages very well. In Southeastern Europe, Christianity is often closely connected with national identity. How can the Church remain faithful to its universal mission while resisting political instrumentalization or identity-based agendas?
Thank you for this question. I think that it is a very difficult task for all Christian denominations in this part of the world or Europe to divide or to distinguish sometimes between national identity and Christian identity. And I understand this difficulty because we know for many centuries this part of the world was under foreign rule. And the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church, they were the only institution which stood near people, kept the culture, language, and faith. These three very important elements of each identity. And it was normal that churches kept the nation together. Today, when we have, let's say, states who took over this task, I think that the churches had forgotten to go back to their original religious mission, and many times they just reinforce certain feelings which are not really Christian but more nationalistic. I always say that we need to go back to certain very important values of our faith. During the Synod on Synodality, 23-24, one of the most important rediscovery for me was the importance of baptism, the sacrament of baptism, which is introducing us into a totally new reality of the people of God. So we are first people of God, saved by Jesus Christ, and after we are Hungarian as myself, or Croat or something like that. And the grace and the charism of baptism should influence our way of living as part of a nation, and not vice versa, that the national appearance and national culture will dictate in which way I will be Christian. Sure that the culture is important, let's say the songs, everything, the prayers, they are always somehow nationally being, but we must not forget the importance of baptism and being members of one people of God all over the world.
Cardinal Cupich, you together with two other American cardinals issued a strong moral critique of U.S. foreign policy. Nevertheless, President Donald Trump ordered military strike against Iran. Can the moral voice of the Church still influence political leaders? What do you think?
Well, I think that our statement came on the heels of the address of the Holy Father on January 9th to the diplomatic corps that's accredited to the Holy See. We wanted to amplify that message. That was the context of what we said. And so our objective was to make sure that that message was more widely understood by people. And we didn't address necessarily political leaders, but the people. Because if we live in a democracy, then each individual has to take responsibility for the way their government acts. And that was our goal. And I think that it resounded in the public because we did receive a lot of feedback, and then eventually we were invited on a national television show, 60 Minutes, to talk more about this. And I can tell you, there's not a day that doesn't go by, especially if I'm out in the public, where people come up to me and say that they really found that messaging helpful to them as they're thinking about things. So how the government officials respond to a particular intervention on the Pope, by the Pope or by us, really is inconsequential for us. What we do hope is that we're going to get people to start talking about these issues, that we're going to make sure that this aspect of these decisions about war and peace include a moral framework. And that's what we try to establish for people.
Cardinal Nemet, we also need that in our region. And it's important, of course, for people to understand their own responsibility. We also have to do something like that. Can the church leaders here help us also to spread this message for each and every of us to understand that it's also on every one of us important that we also spread this message that we must do something. We can't just wait for someone else to do things.
I think that we have here much free space where we should act a bit more with courage. We are not so loud like our brothers in the United States.
Why do you think that's so?
I can imagine that it is somehow a question of democratic culture and heritage. The United States has a longer history of democracy, and we need some new, let's say, examples of democracy. We know that many countries in this region are new countries. Like, let's say, like Croatia, Serbia, 35 years, it is not a long history, and there are lots of struggles which do not permit church leaders to speak clearly with one voice, because there are still too many emotions involved in the independence and the memories which are not healed. We need more reconciliation, and without reconciliation, there is no courage to speak about peace. And at least I have this experience. We are not enough strong to speak more loudly.
I would just say that every country, every episcopal conference, every group of bishops has to decide what's the most effective way. I think here in Croatia we have an example of an alternate way of addressing this issue, and that is by Archbishop Mate organizing an event like this where people do come, and now this is going to be broadcast and people will hear it. So he doesn't have to get up like we did in the United States and make a declaration. But by organizing a group of people that's here interested in something like this, that is another way that's valid for this message to get out. So I would leave it up to each bishop to decide what's the best, given the historical circumstances, the cultural differences, in order to get that message out.
Sometimes we can also do good things, you see.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
No, it is a marvelous thing that here and the organization of this encounter.
Cardinal Cupich, in recent years, multiple moments from the religious life in the United States have come to Europe, including Croatia. Among them, so-called culture war. We all facing culture war in our societies. We are talking a lot about that, which is based again on this struggle of competing identities. What arguments can be used to explain that Christianity is not primarily a matter of identity belonging? Always we have that same problem.
Yes, that is a trap that people fall into, that their sense of belonging then means that they belong to an exclusive club. But that is not at the heart of the Christian message. The Christian message is about mission, about expanding the tent, about going to the margins, about making the gospel available to others. The late Pope Francis made it very clear that the church cannot be a museum where we stay in a very enclosed area and take care of ourselves, but we have to be a field hospital that goes out. When we begin to think only in terms of having a church by which I'm secure, in which I'm with my group, then that's not the gospel, and it's not the mission of Jesus Christ that he gave to us. Jesus didn't tell those disciples at the Pentecost, okay, I want you to stay in Galilee and make your own church there. He said, go to the ends of the earth. And I think once we forget that, we're no longer faithful to the mission Christ gave us.
Cardinal Nemet, I would like also to hear your position on this issue. How do you assess this influence when we are talking about, for example, public prayer gathering in Croatian city squares? I read your statement that you think that that's not traditional form of devotion in our region and that they reflect also ideological influence from the United States. So what do you think about this cultural war? We are also talking very much about it.
I am sure that in that article that I spoke about, I mentioned even, I think, Poland, as Poland is one of the countries which is originating this new way of prayer. And I'm sure that people, if they do it sincerely, they are doing a good job, let's say in this way. Good job in the sense that they really try to adore God. The real question for me is whether it is exclusive prayer group or inclusive. Very much I have the impression that it is very exclusive, that they are somehow better. They are the real soul of the national church. And this is not something that I can just support without criticism. As Cardinal Cupich said, the mission of the church is open for everyone, no one excluded. If it is needed, we will go till the end, because that was the mission command. And going back to cultural war, the real question for me, what is the image of a culture that we would like to construct? Is this a culture based on evangelical values, on Jesus' teaching, or on the interest or manipulated interest of a certain small circle of people who will use it to control and to achieve some other aims too?
What can we as individuals do to understand, this important difference you are talking about?
I think that I don't like the description that the church is a teacher of nations, but many times I think that we have to go back to this idea that the church has its own or her own instruments in helping people to create a clear opinion and judgment. In earlier times, it was clear that the parish priest was preaching and he gave the rules for the whole village, and everyone was happy just going on. Today there is no way.
It was easier.
It was easier maybe for many people, but starting with the last popes since the Second Vatican Council, we have a greater freedom of conscience. But not only greater freedom, greater responsibility to find out what is the real teaching of the church. I think that the church can use her voice, which is still very much heard, at least in our area, let's say in this space here, to raise issues which are really Catholic, in the sense that it is open-minded, full with love, not only tolerance, but love, and creating a culture of peace, which is starting in our hearts. We cannot say you must change. I have to change. I have to change my way of talking, of thinking. I have to clean my mind from hatred and all these false ideological pictures and images of others. We are all together, not they and we or others.
Regarding everything you just said, Cardinal Cupich, we have in our societies such a huge messages of hatred, of divisions, extremist messages that very often are wrapped up in words of patriotism or Christianity. How can Christians resist all these tendencies? What can we do? How can we heal our societies not to have so many divisions, not to have so many hate in them?
Well, I think first of all, and maybe this is how priests in the pulpit, bishops in their dioceses can be of help, just to help people understand the damage that kind of approach is doing to them personally. How it is undermining their own self-respect for who they are, that it in some way damages their soul. And to talk about that, what does hatred, what does vengeance, what does a sense of vendetta do to you in terms of absorbing energy from you, for you, your time, your attention? You know, so often we see that people who are so angry with someone else are the ones who suffer more. My first year as a priest, I was with a wonderful pastor. I walked into sacristy one day, and there was a man who was very angry with the pastor. He was just very brutal with him, criticizing him. And so when he left, I said to the pastor, "I'm sorry that you had to experience this." "Oh," he said, "that's okay." He said, "You know, I had to put up with this for 5 minutes. He has to live with himself for 24 hours a day."
I completely agree with you.
So I think that it is important maybe for everybody to examine what's happening to them when they have this attitude. Because that really is very dangerous spiritually. And when we begin to put that back on them, then maybe we can see some changes.
I absolutely agree with you. This is a great message. Thank you so much. Cardinal Nemet, what would you say in our region again? Of course, we see that common people, when we are talking about reconciliation, much easier, make good relationships, much better than politicians do that. Can maybe also church leaders help our politicians to be more like a common people, to make this reconciliation in our region, that we all can live together, that we don't have to think always about others, they are our enemies, we have to fight with them. No, we don't.
I'm a bit afraid that we have much to do here. The real problem for me is that the influence of our voice as church leaders is not always accepted. One thing. The second thing, politicians think in a different manner about the whole history or happenings in this world, because they are connected to the question of power and elections. We are in a democracy, so you have to be careful whether you will be re-elected. And when you already reached this position, you will use not always for the common good, but to reinforce your power base. And unfortunately, in our region, we see even to increase your personal wealth. And this is something which is connected with power and question. And here, it is difficult to speak about reconciliation. If you don't have a clear enemies, you lose 50% of your political power. When you have enemies, clear enemies, you can always play on it, because enemies will produce in people emotions of fear, and you can come back as a good politician and you will propose the security, and you will just control the whole thing. And this is the reason in our region that we are so weak in the politics of reconciliation. And I call up all the representatives of different faith groups and churches that we should go home and make more for reconciliation in our region. We still need very much reconciliation.
But then again, we can talk about responsibility, each and every one of us, because
Yes.
we are the citizens at the end of the day, and we are going to vote, and we can also make a change if we want.
Very much. You are right, and we have to start from ourselves.
That's right. Cardinal Cupich, when we are talking about others and how to accept them, you also have strongly criticized mass deportations in the United States, and you often point out that your own grandfather actually was an immigrant, and many of us are from the immigrant families. So how do you explain the growing hostility towards migrants and foreigners? How come?
Well, in fact, all four of my grandparents were immigrants from Croatia. And so I know their stories. There are 14 million people in the United States who don't have documents. Think of that, 14 million. The church has never been against, in fact, it's been in favor of the government securing the borders. That's never the question for us. But it's, why do we have a broken immigration system that can't deal with this problem of 14 million people who are working? They're in our fields with regard to picking the fruit and vegetables. They're caring for our children as nannies. They're taking care of landscaping our lawns. They're involved in restaurants and hotel business. And they are contributing to society. How is it that we can't provide an opportunity either for a work status or a path to citizenship that is realistic? Instead, the mass deportation policy has been to go and take people who have been here sometimes for 30 years in the United States and separate them from their family because their children now, born in the United States, are citizens. How is family separation helpful to society, helpful to our country, helpful to the world? And so we are pressing for significant immigration reform. That's where our position is. And we think that that's the only way forward. But to indiscriminately have mass deportation, and the Bishops' Conference voted 100% for that statement, that we are against indiscriminate mass deportation, to wake up the conscience of people to say, this is not the way to do it. Let's look for a way in which we protect the rights of individuals, but also make sure that we show dignity to human families.
But people who are doing that also call themselves Christians.
Yes, they do. And that should not stop us from saying what's right.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Excellent answer. Cardinal Nemet, for many years, this region also has been part of the major migration routes into Europe. In your opinion, how do you see the Church's role in this question, in balancing humanitarian responsibility, social tensions, and the political pressures surrounding migrations?
The Catholic Church has played a significant role starting 2015 when the great immigration wave came through our countries, and played an important role in helping out these people on their way towards other countries, because we know, unfortunately or fortunately, no one wants to stay with us. So they will just continue their road to Germany or Austria or other countries. This is one thing. The second thing that we have now, at least in Serbia, we work together with the European Commission on helping people who are rejected, let's say in this way, and deported or just sent back to Serbia. Serbia is one of the first third countries, not member of the European Union. So there is a program well paid by richer European community countries, Union countries, and people are brought back to Serbia. So we are helping them to make documents to start at least a normal life in Serbia. So we do not have so many migrants now, but we have people who are resent, let's say in this way, to Serbia because they passed through Serbia. The role of the Church is surely to protect the right of all these people. They have the same rights as we, and something else is to clarify at the end whether they are ready to be accepted in the Union, they will get some papers to stay. That's something else. But starting, the first point is there are people who came to us. The reasons can be different. It is not ours now to look for it. But in that given moment, they need help and we have to help them. That's one thing. The second thing is that we have to raise our voice against xenophobia, which is growing all over, even in Europe. And unfortunately, even in our countries. I know that 2015, Serbia was extremely open for migrants because they had this experience of 90s. So everyone helped the migrants, giving food, clothes, and everything. In last 2-3 years, this atmosphere changed very much, and people are getting very angry at migrants, although they are really a small group, because the borders are kept so well on other parts of Europe, southern from Serbia. But there is a change of approach and less readiness to help them. And I think that we have to do something here as churches.
Unfortunately, in Croatia also, and in other countries in Europe, as you mentioned. Another important issue and interesting question also we have to raise here during our conversation and discussion is that this area where we are right now and where the Mediterranean theological meetings are held belongs to very secularized regions. What could you advise the Church and the Christians on how to be best to prepare for the life in society that is no longer so much Christian?
Yes, well, I think we see the influence of secularization. But I would add this. It's true that you can't take for granted that the faith is going to be passed on to the next generation. There's a saying that we have in the United States that God does not have grandchildren, which means that it is up to every generation to, in fact, accept the faith. That's a healthy thing, because it means that when people, instead of just continuing in the Catholic faith because it's been their past, their history, their parents and grandparents, they're not as engaged. But when people have to make a decision and to really choose to be a disciple of Jesus, that's a much stronger faith. Happily, we have seen in the United States, and we saw in Chicago, about a 50% increase of young people from post-college to about 35 coming into church. And we're doing some studies of what are the motivations there, what's going on. But there is something that's stirring in the hearts of young people today about faith and faith practice and belonging that we see within the United States. I don't have any statistics for other countries. And we engaged 20 other dioceses, and we did a study in Chicago to see if there were some common points. And it was very interesting to see how young people are looking at their future, looking for a place to belong, but also seeing that their life has to be much bigger than just earning money. There's a stirring in their hearts. It's that restlessness that St. Augustine talked about and that the Pope continually goes back to. So we're going to continue to look at that, and I'm not discouraged at all. I think that the Holy Spirit is at work in people.
And because of everything what is going on in the world, maybe people now are looking for answers. They need them more than ever, maybe.
Some stability, some center of gravity for their moral conscience.
Mm-hmm. Right. Cardinal Nemet, as a bishop serving in a country where Catholics are a minority, what experience you can offer in your church, maybe when we are talking about secularization?
I will say something not expected. I think that the time of secularization is over.
Okay.
It is clearly what Cardinal Cupich said for Chicago and the United States. We have the same movement in Western Europe, and not to speak about my country. My country in Serbia is now a problem, not secularization, but over-clericalization. And the omnipresence of the Orthodox Church all over in the politics, culture, and everywhere. So for the Orthodox countries, it is more characteristical that people are even more present in the church as they were earlier, 10 years ago. Let's say in Serbia 10 years ago, around 70% of people said we take part in the church life every week or something like that. Now it is plus 85%. So it is the question of being concentrated only on certain countries in Western Europe and to say secularization is growing, it does not give the right picture of the church in Europe. Europe is much bigger. And if you just listen to the bishops from France, from England, Belgium, how many young people are looking and searching for something deeper, because secularization cannot fill that vacuum in us that we are looking for God and His presence, or just say to transcendental or sense of life. What is the sense of life? To have everything. You have already everything. So to say in this way, but still you are inside somehow empty. Many times it must not be in that way, but many times that was the experience of secularization. Let's say only in France, around 45,000 adults, young adults between 15 and 35, asked for baptism this year. 10,000 in Belgium, and in Germany are coming back, young people. So I'm sure that the tendency is changing, and the Catholic Church has now, I'm speaking only for the Catholic Church, now a chance to use even this negative trend coming from the States of manipulating religion to use it for her own purposes. Because it means religion is getting very important. And outside of Europe, religion is all over very important. Europe is the only continent which succeeded, and the only Western Europe succeeded to divide, to make a division between faith and culture, personal religious approach and public appearance. And it is somehow time to have more courage to say it is not okay, we have to change something, and we can change. And it is interesting, it doesn't come only from us, church leaders, but it comes from people who are looking for something new.
Do you agree?
I would just tie the two things together that we have been discussing, that is the cultural wars and this phenomenon. I think leaders of the church, but also the adults, the older people, have to realize that if they engage in cultural wars and division, that is the biggest alienation for young people to come into church. Young people want nothing to do with cultural wars, want nothing to do with division. And so if they see adult Christians, church leaders, trying to divide people, they're going to walk away. So we have to pay attention to that, because young people today are not looking for entering into the culture wars. They want some security within a community of faith that they can believe in, and that they can also walk with other people in a way in which we're co-responsible. So I think it is a warning within the life of the church that the more we pursue culture wars, the more we're going to alienate young people.
Do you agree when we are talking about our region?
That means even in our region, we have some initiatives in Serbia even, where people come together, young people. And we are a bishop conference of 4 countries: Serbia, Kosovo, Montenegro, and North Macedonia. And these are 4 different cultures, 4 different nations. Even the languages are different. And still we are capable of organizing programs together. And young people will never start with the question, where do you come from, in the sense of excluding, but to enrich themselves, because everyone brings something different. And young people, when I go to Pristina, that means 2008, I went for the first time as bishop, and I was able still to talk in Serbian. Today, it is only English among young people. And they will speak to everyone, no problems, where you come from, and they will come to us, visit us. It is a real problem when you reach around 25 and you start a political career, that you think that it belongs to a good politician to create divisions and just hatred in the society. And it is not true.
Then problems start.
That's it.
Yeah. You have also witnessed the pontificate of Pope Francis and now the first year of Pope Leo. Among other things, you have supported Pope Francis on issue of liturgical unity. How can unity be preserved and a synodical church be built in a situation where some look back with nostalgia at pre-conciliar times?
Well, first of all, I've been supportive of all the popes, going back to Pius XII, who was the Pope when I was young.
Okay. Fair enough.
I've been around a long time.
Fair enough.
Well, I think that the important thing here is that, as Pope Francis said in Traditionis Custodes, the Reformed liturgy, the Second Vatican Council, is the unique expression of the Roman Rite. And let's keep in mind here that the Council's first act, the first document, was on the liturgy. Why? Because it was the liturgy that would be the means by which the reforms in the church would take place in the individual lives of people. The way that we worship now helps us understand how we are members in society, how we address the modern world. And so he wanted to make sure that we don't lose that, because people who want, out of nostalgia or other reasons, a former liturgy, also in many cases are tied to an older way of looking at the life of the church, where we didn't have relations with Protestant denominations, where we had attitudes about Jewish people that was unhealthy and unfair, where we were not so steadfast on religious freedom. And so the Holy Father, Pope Francis, wanted to make sure that we are true to the Second Vatican Council. Because the people, many of the people early on, when Archbishop Lefebvre started everything, they were not just about having Mass in Latin or the Old Mass. They rejected the Council. And that's what we're seeing today. So I think that the liturgy is the means by which, in fact, the reforms of the Council are going to take place. You cannot get to those reforms through the old liturgy. I think that is important to keep in mind.
Of course. Cardinal Nemet, how can local churches that are small and unfortunately do not have so many resources authentically live the synodical process?
It is a very good question. When I read it the first time, when I was given your question in advance, I sat down and I tried really to analyze what happens in a different way in a small diocese, which is mine, let's say in Serbia, with 20,000 Catholics, and what happens in bigger dioceses that we have even in Serbia. I must tell you something very important. When I came back from Rome after the second session of the Synod, I went around my archdiocese, and we have 17 parishes. So I was graced with the possibility to meet all the people, that is all the communities, not all the people, it would be too much, but it is a personal encounter. I don't know whether Cardinal Cupich has this possibility to visit all his parishes, because I can imagine that his archdiocese is much bigger. But in my case, it was really a personal approach which gave me the possibility to share with people all the things that we had. The second thing, what we started doing and realizing, it is the way how we speak to each other and how we listen to each other. The way of the methodology of this 23-24 Synod with these circular tables and small groups gave us the courage to do the same in our places. So it is very important that we listen to each other and we try to find out what is the Spirit giving us in these small communities, conversatio in spiritu, as they say, and to discern what we have, what can we do and what should we do in our present situation as a small church.
Cardinal Cupich, of course, you have supported all the popes, but is it possible for you to compare Pope Francis and Pope Leo? In what way are they different? In what way are they similar?
Well, let's keep in mind that the church, when we select the next pope, or even when a new bishop is appointed, we don't speak of a replacement. We speak of a successor. And there's a difference between those two. A successor is one who takes what's there and builds on himself. And I think that we're seeing this in a very beautiful way with Pope Leo and Pope Francis. He's very clear that the church has to move in a synodal way. He has looked for ways in which the cardinals can come together on a regular basis. And when he does have us together, we're not in an aula with everybody there. We're around tables of 8 or so people, and we are able to share our experiences. And the other thing is that at the heart of synodality, which is something that Pope Francis called the church to, is something that's often missed. At the core of it is a firm belief that Jesus Christ not only rose from the dead 2,000 years ago, but is alive now and is speaking to the church and calling us into the future. And we have to be attentive to that. But Christ speaks to all the baptized, not just to the hierarchy, not just in the past voices, but now, here, present. And so we should not be afraid to be open to listen to where the Spirit of Christ is calling us. The real problem, I think, we see this in the life of the church and the understanding of the church, the understanding of the Eucharist, is that there really is a lack of understanding of what it means for Jesus to rise from the dead. He's present now. And that's, even in the Eucharist, some people think that the Mass and the Eucharist is about Jesus making an appearance, like the Pope does on Sunday at the window. He makes an appearance for us temporarily, and then we're fine. It's not that at all. The Second Vatican Council, Sacrosanctum Concilium, says this: Jesus is always present. But what's different about the Eucharist is that Jesus, who's always present, makes present in the lives of those who celebrate his passion and his victory over death and life. That he makes present that victory for us, that we participate in that he brings us to the cross. That's what the Eucharist is about. And so whenever we want to diminish the significance of the Eucharist or diminish the sense of Jesus risen from the dead as some past event, or that Jesus makes an appearance here and now and doesn't call us to something more in the mission, we lose our focus.
Cardinal Nemet, in our region where Catholics, Orthodox, Christians and Muslims live side by side, how can a relationship move beyond formal dialogue? What can all communities do? How can we understand better each other?
I think that we have some formal, let's say, approaches when we meet for different occasions and we visit each other for liturgy or special events. The second thing, which is very important, that we start talking positively about others and not saying what is the difference between us, but we are looking for the elements which are uniting us. And especially it is much easier with other Christian denominations because we have a same triune God and most of the sacraments, although not always the same. And this is making easier to talk. Concretely in Serbia, the interreligious dialogue is experiencing some difficulties because we have 3 different Muslim groups. And they are very much divided among themselves. So it is difficult to approach them. They will never come together in 3, let's say, as groups. But even if someone visits me, one of the 3, I'm sure that a week later I will get some angry letters from the other 2, why I accepted them and why I did have contact with them.
So you have to be very careful.
More or less at the first time when I experienced something, I was a bit shocked, but now I learned to keep my own line, and I talked to all the 3 of them, and we are okay, although there are some reactions. Going back even more to the collaboration with other Christian denominations, it's much easier with the Protestant church in the present moment even to pray together. We do not have common prayer with the Orthodox Christians. And I asked once, and I was told that the approach is different. We say on the ecumenical path, we have to pray to get closer. Many times I am said that for Orthodox the prayer is the fruit of getting together. It is not at the beginning, but it is going to be the sign of the end when we reach a communion so that we can pray together. I don't know whether it is true. We have here a metropolitan. He could maybe explain it, but this is an answer that I got something. But something is very important for us Catholics. It is not a question of free choice to work for the unity of the Christians. It is in the gospel. It comes from Jesus.
Of course. Before I call our audience to join our conversation, I have the last round of four questions for you. Cardinal Cupich, very often when people talk about you, my colleagues journalists, when they describe you, they very often say that you are like a leading voice of the progressive wing in a church. That means, of course, that you are very often criticized from the other part, more conservative circles. When we are talking about progressive wing and conservative circles, what does it mean? How deep are divisions within the church?
Well, I think that people are going to always try to categorize and mark people with their own description. I think that if anyone takes a fair look at the things that I've said, I'm being faithful to the gospel. And yes, maybe I raise things in a different way, and perhaps talk about issues that otherwise would be neglected. But I always try to, I make a decision when I think about talking. I go through three decisions. The first one is it true? Does it have to be said? Do I have to say it? And if I get to that point where I have to say it because it's true and no one else is saying it and it is important for it to be said, then I say, I don't bark at every dog that goes by. But I have a responsibility to inform my people, to help them form their conscience. And most of the things that I say are on the heels of things that Francis and Leo are saying. And so for instance, Amoris Laetitia, when that came out, there were some important things that were not being said in our country by the hierarchy, and I talked to other bishops and I began to speak out about those things. So I look for whether or not there's an incompleteness in the proclamation of the gospel by a particular topic being ignored. And if I feel that it has to be said, then I will say it. But I don't think, I speak about all of the various issues across the spectrum. And many times people want to categorize me because they want to dismiss me, not because they want to listen to me.
Of course. Cardinal Nemet, what?
May I add something? They are listening to you very attentively.
What is your approach? How do you spread your message?
So it is a difficult question because because of my personal situation and the place in Belgrade, I have other challenges, let's say in this way.
We love that word, challenge. There are no problems anymore, only challenges.
Only challenges, no problems. You know that because of my Hungarian, let's say, descendants, and because being Hungarian, and I used to work in Hungary as a religious and later secretary of the Bishops' Conference, I sometimes raise my voice in some Hungarian topics, which is not always well accepted. On the other side, I used to work as the professor in Croatia for 10 years by the Jesuits in Zagreb, and it was a beautiful time, and I have lots of friends in Croatia. But after COVID, when I became Archbishop of Belgrade, somehow certain issues that I raised brought about negative, let's say, echoes in Croatia, and I think that it is something that we have to take seriously. These are the challenges in my day. I don't speak on all the issues, but I will agree with Cardinal Cupich that certain topics are important for our people. Let us say, not only people, as they say, in the general society, but even for our Catholics, where I have to raise my voice. I am not called to somehow to coordinate them, but to give them some spiritual food to make them easier to find their own way in this world.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready now for your questions. So please raise your hand. We are ready. I'm sure that cardinals will be happy to answer.
Can we make clear that it should be a question: who, why, what, or where? Not a speech.
The name.
And we should know who they are.
Okay. If it's not a problem for you also to introduce yourself, you would like to know who you are, that's appropriate, of course.
Good evening. I'm Stanko Perica, Jesuit, Director of Jesuit Refugee Service in Southeast Europe. Thank you so much, Your Eminences, for a great conversation. Thank you also, and Kasapović, for great questions that you did. One of the questions was about synodality. Synodality, as you know, in recent years is a very important topic, a new way of running church, living church, being church. But in a way, at least in our context, we don't see so much changes as we would like to see. Cardinal Nemet was sharing some of his experiences, but I'm wondering if you could share with us what should be maybe our first initial steps, at least some baby steps. Maybe it's easier when you have Cardinal Nemet beside you. We don't have him here, but if you could share a bit, what should we do? How can we engage more with synodality here in Croatia? Thank you.
It is a very difficult question, and I will say why difficult. Not so much because of the matter or subject, but more that I don't want to enter into the courtyard of some other, let's say, bishops or bishops' conference. Every conference has to find her own way how to realize synodality. This is one thing. The second thing is that I am sure that the history of the church showed us and shows us every day that certain important processes need time. It cannot be decided in 2021 we will make a synodal church, as it was officially announced that we will start with the whole process. But it is going on. And the clear sign that of 21, 23, 24, now we have already a possibility in 28 to celebrate the first church assembly, which is in the spirit of synodality. But we have to look at the beginning of the whole process, and it was the Second Vatican Council. Synodality is not something that just fell down from clouds, but it is something which is a process of development of the theology of the Second Vatican Council, especially ecclesiology, and the part of people of God who take seriously the gift of baptism and trying to live with it. So it is a great challenge for every local church that baptized people will start organizing themselves in small synodal groups and from grassroots level entering higher levels, let's say in this way. Not always is the hierarchy which started big reforms or changed the mentality. Synodality should become a culture of life in the Catholic Church, according to me. It is a new culture, and for new culture you need not only certain individuals, but the community, which will change the approach. I hope that it is somehow an answer.
Would you like to add something?
So I would just refer you to my recent publication in L'Osservatore Romano in Vatican News, in which I wrote a piece entitled "Synodality is like dancing."
Yeah.
And I used the image of growing up learning kolo dances, the folk dances. So take a look at that, and I believe that experience that I had as a child taught me how you listen to the Holy Spirit just as you listen to the music, that you make space for each other, you make sure that everyone's included, as a kolo dance allows for people to come together, but that you also respect the fact that the dimensions of the floor have already been set by a tradition that's handed on to us. So there are many parallels. It serves as a good metaphor, and it does take time, but it's time to start dancing.
Nice. Another question? Yeah.
I am Tomislav Kovač from the Catholic Faculty of Theology, University of Zagreb. I want to thank both cardinals for this. It's an honor to have you among us and to hear your reflections. I have two questions, one for Cardinal Cupich and the other one for Cardinal Nemet. For Cardinal Cupich first, how is the influence of the evangelical Pentecostal movement on the President Donald Trump, on his politics in US, on the world? What kind of Christianity is this evangelical Christianity? And how does this movement has some influence on the Roman Catholic in US? Second question is to Cardinal Nemet. In your opinion, what are the main obstacles for ecumenical dialogue in our region, especially between the Serbian Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church in Croatia? And what could be done first to improve our ecumenical relations?
Can I take his question?
I don't think so. I don't think so. We are waiting impatiently.
So I think that there are leaders in the evangelical church which we have a good relationship with, who have a particular way of looking at the Christian faith, and they are divided among themselves of whether or not the way in which the president is moving forward represents them. So I don't want to group all evangelicals together in this framework here. I think that there is an openness on the part of the Catholic people to listen to what we have to say, and particularly what the Pope has to say. The Pope is very popular in the United States, not just among Catholics, but around the whole United States, because the fact of where he was born and where he came from. So I don't have too much fear that a type of Christianity is going to influence our people at all. I think that they live, especially if they're practicing the faith, they understand that in their celebration of the Eucharist, what the gospel calls them to. Let's remember, the evangelicals do not have the celebration of the sacraments that we do. We should not underestimate the impact that the sacramental life in the Catholic Church has on the average everyday Catholic. And we should make sure that we totally invest that perspective in what we have to say. So I don't have too many fears at all that the evangelicals who are in a particular way are going to influence our people.
What should I say about this difficult question? I would have really changed even there, and I would have taken easily the question of Cardinal Cupich, and easier to say. I have maybe an idea that I developed since I am in Belgrade. The promotion of the unity of Christians is a promotion which is a task and mission for the whole Catholic Church. And the Orthodox Church of Serbia is a is a church. Okay, it came back. So the Catholic Church is a world church. Orthodox Church of Serbia is a national church. And there are 15 independent churches. So the question of Croatian-Serbian relationship enters just as a minority question into the guest of the promotion of the unity. It is a so small part of the whole process that if you leave Zagreb or Belgrade, you will have a totally different perspective of the whole problematics. And the Orthodox Church of Serbia has a very good relationship with the German Catholic Church or with the Catholic Church in Austria. And I can say one of the reasons are the beautiful grants of free churches, which are not used anymore for Catholic purposes. So the Catholic Church are giving them to the Orthodox Christians. So there are different steps which are extremely good. And I will refrain from this temptation to watch the whole ecumenic process in the world and the Catholic Church through the prism of Croatian-Serbian relationship.
So, thank you for this presence. It's very honorable to listen these new perspectives from two cardinals. My name is Armin and I come from Sarajevo. I'm a student of Islamic theology. In your conversation, you mentioned the problem of immigration in Europe, and I feel very concerned as a European for a rising number of incidents that happened in the last couple of years, especially last ones in Belfast, for example, which include violent expressions and calling for violence for specific ethnic groups, so as religious groups. So my question is, how can this communication between different churches and religious communities, how can we make some impact to relax these tensions? Thank you.
Well, I can only speak from my experience in Chicago. We have an interfaith leadership group that is in contact on a regular basis, and whenever there is bigotry that threatens one community over another, we come out with a statement and are very firm about that. At the same time, it's up to each one of us as leaders, and I do that in Chicago, to meet regularly with the Jewish, Muslim, other leaders, Christian faiths as well, so that we keep in contact with each other. I go to Seder suppers with Jewish people, the Iftar celebration with the Muslims. I'm present at other celebrations from different groups when they invite me. So we need to keep in contact. Particularly, we saw that with the Muslim community, because they are a minority in Chicago. And the leaders came to me some time ago and said they're afraid that because their children are being many times targeted with bigotry, they're afraid that something's going to happen where they're going to go on the internet and become radicalized. And so we've always looked for ways in which we can have our young people come together for different events, and we promote that. We also have a Holocaust museum in Chicago, and I ask our high school students and our high schools to go and visit that, to see what the history of that terrible moment in life was for Europe, for the world. So it's up to us to take initiatives ahead of any kind of bigotry that's expressed, and build relationships so that when things happen, we can respond in a way that's helpful to society.
We have more questions.
Hello, my name is Simon. I'm from Germany. Thank you so much for the discussion. It was really interesting to listen to both of you. My question, I think it mostly to Cardinal Cupich, but I think both of you can answer. When the Pope Leo spoke out against the war on Iran and about the U.S. policy, then there was this reaction from the U.S. government that said like it was considered as a threat towards the Pope. And my question is, with the rise of authoritarianism, not only in the U.S. but also in many other countries, people from the church who promote peace and dialogue are under threat. And my question is, are you afraid? And what would you tell to Christians who engage themselves in a dialogue when there comes this reaction from authoritarian governments? Yeah.
I would use the same phrase that the Pope did when he was asked about the comments of the President. He said, "I'm not afraid of him." I think that was sufficient. I think it's good to say that in a public way. Mm-hmm. And he did.
That's it, and I will say the same. Even in our small situations, like let's say in Serbia, we have protests and demonstrations in the last 16 months. Fear can be somehow back in your mind, but the real question is what is right and what is wrong in that present moment, and whether it is good to say something or not. So this is the real question. And if you base your words on the gospel or social teaching of the church when we say in this way, I'm sure that it is your conscience which is giving you strength, and in your conscience God is there, so He dwells in us. So I think that it is more important to preach as to be afraid and wait for bad reactions.
Jesus said many times in the gospel, "Noli timere," don't be afraid. I have friends who go regularly to Alcoholics Anonymous, and one of them told me that for them, fear is an acronym that means future events appear real. And so it is important to know go back to where reality is rather than future events.
One more question.
My name is Steve Beldak. I'm theology professor at Université Catholique de Louvain. Thank you, Eminences. It was a music to my ears. My first question is a musical one. So you mentioned, dear Cardinal, the metaphor of a colo and a dance as a metaphor for synodality. My issue is that at the colo, at the end, everybody needs to dance at the same time, exactly the same steps and in the same rhythm. Is this really what we want? And how do we allow for some creativity and jazzifying the colo, if you want? Second one is, would you allow me? Second one is for you. It's about the trust, and it's been repeated for many times, and I think to a large degree it's true that churches and the religious institution often miss institutional trust. We forget, of course, that institutions are often people, and that trust can be betrayed, wounded by wrong words at the wrong time, wrong events. Excuse me for making it personal. How do you repair your trust when it's wounded? Thank you.
Well, I would say that if you know anything about the colo dances, everyone is not doing the same steps. And there is plenty creativity in the dance itself. The important thing, however, is that you don't step on each other's toes. So that's how I would respond to that. I'm going to let you take the second question.
So it was a very easy answer. Very, very easy answer. I don't know whether my answer will be so easy, but I take the situation with the Catholic Church after the first cases of abuse of young people all over child abuse, let's say, in this way, in 90s in the United States, and later the explosion at the beginning of 2000 and plus, and even in Europe going through, the church was suffering very much. What happened? Pope Benedict started doing order at home, and Pope Francis continued it. And we know that today the Catholic Church has the best rules and best prepared for prevention, because prevention is the first thing. The second is to take care of the victims, to listen to them, to help them. And third, to prepare in the formation, ongoing formation for people working in the church. I say people working in the, not only priests, but all the people who are connected with the church and with young people. And you need time. These are 20 years. But during 20 years, the church has done extremely much in this field. And today, I'm sure that the trust in the church, at least in this question, is much bigger as it was 20 years ago. So it is healing. It is not erasing the problem, but you face it. You prepare steps, starting from preventing it, teaching, ongoing formation, taking care of victims, lots of different elements. And at the end, you show the whole world, not for the sake of having a better image, but being closer to Christ and His gospel.
We have a little bit of time, so maybe one more question.
Okay, my name is Viola, and I have a question regarding your euphoric view on the young people coming to church. My question is, who is catering to them? Because I'm afraid that those who are catering to the young people at the moment in many of our churches are those who are reactive and those who are offering a nationalistic identity. So how can we cater with a different program? I think if you look in this room and you see the young students who are here and the work the Archbishop is doing, this is great, as you said, Your Eminence. But we heard from everybody, this is an island. So it's nice to praise him, and I'm thankful for the invitation. But how can we enlarge this so that we are catering for these young people with a theology that is giving hope in a life that is worthwhile living?
So our experience of when we have the order for the Christian initiation of adults, that is a year-long process that leads up to the Easter Vigil to initiate people either through baptism or completing the sacraments of initiation. It involves not just one person but a whole team. And so you have many voices. And we begin always in these discussions of asking the person about their faith journey, rather than saying, this is what we believe and you have to accept it. It's trying to get to know who these people are and to have an understanding that God is already, to give them an understanding that God is already active in their life. You know, that what has prompted them to this moment, and where do you hold that up? That, I think, in the long run is going to be the anchor for them to move forward in the life of the church. So I'm confident that we do have a good process. Maybe in other countries that is a concern that you raised here. But the way that we do it respects them as people, as human beings, that God is already working in their life. I remember that line of Pope Francis where he sent missionaries to a foreign land. He said, remember, the Holy Spirit was there before you arrived. And I think that we have to keep that in mind with people who come to the church. The Holy Spirit was there before we got there. And to have that kind of respect. So if that's not happening, then I think there can be some damage done to a person's spiritual life.
question?
I will just say everything that the cardinal said is very important, and we have to realize it in our lives. In our own circle, let's say, in our churches, the question is, for me, who is responsible? Whom will I nominate as responsible for young people when they arrive and they are looking for a new experience or opening up for religious traditions? And here I am very careful, as I already said it here, that my archdiocese is not so big that I cannot sometimes personally oversee and overview certain processes. So I am trying to be present even in this sector of life and trying to avoid this nationalism. It is easier for us to avoid these problems because the believers or the Christians, the Catholics in the archdiocese come from 22 different nations. So that we are originally multicultural and trying to live together. And it is not, as I said, even with this example from Kosovo, the question is, if I ask someone where do you come from, it is not to make a difference, but to know what kind of riches you are bringing in.
Thank you so much for all of the great questions, really. At the end, Cardinals, we have been talking about noise of war and age of militarism. What message at the end would you like that each and every one of us take from this night tonight, that we take with us and to bear in our mind?
It depends on each one of us. Conferences like this are important for mutual learning, but then you have to go home realizing that you've been enriched by this and examine your own conscience of how you are bringing about peace building, peacemaking, in your environment, your family, your workplace, but also then to raise your voice within the political sphere. I think that this is what's so beautiful about conscience. Each one of us have one. And we have to allow what we have learned in these days to provoke our conscience, to ask ourselves, what does the gospel demand of me now?
Cardinal,
I will add one thought. Go home, be multiplicator of this beautiful experience as a small island, and don't be ashamed or do not have fear to enter into political life. Mm-hmm. We need young politicians who are motivated by some positive religious values. I say for the Christians with Christians idea, and our Muslim friends with their own wealth and charism, but we need young people who would like to do something for the common good.
And if you do that, when you go home tonight, first of all, have a glass of rakia.
Thank you so much. This was really the best ending. I can't add any more. Thank you so much. It was really, it was a pleasure for all of us to hear all of your messages, and it was my pleasure having to talking to you. Thank you so much, Cardinal. Thank you. You're a great audience. Thank you. And now Rakia.